Ever come across a headline that just makes you stop and say, wait, what?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, today's deep dive is going to be one of those for sure. We're talking about Dan Bongino being appointed as the FBI's new deputy director.
The conservative media personality.
Exactly him. So we've got articles from both AP News and Euronews taking us through this story.
It's a wild one.
It really is. So to set the stage, I mean, the FBI, an institution that really prides itself on being above the political fray.
Right.
And then you've got Bongino, a figure who is really known for being outspoken about his conservative views and his criticism of even the FBI itself.
Stepping into a leadership role there.
Yeah. And this scenario is raising eyebrows.
On both sides, for sure.
Yeah. So let's unpack this a little bit. For those who might not be familiar with Bongino, he does actually have a background in law enforcement. He served as a Secret Service agent for both Presidents Bush and Obama.
Yeah, so we know he's seen the inner workings of high-level security, for sure.
Right, exactly. But then his career path took a pretty sharp turn after his time in the Secret Service.
That's right, he had those unsuccessful bids for political office.
Like Senate and congressional seats?
Yeah, and then he really dove headfirst into that world of conservative media.
He's got a super popular podcast, had a show on Fox News, and is just all over social media.
Big presence, for sure.
And that's where things get
really interesting.
Yeah, because he hasn't just been a commentator. He's been like a really fierce critic of the very agency he's now going to be leading.
You know, he's called for some major reforms within the Secret Service, even labeled it a failed agency at one point.
And that's what makes this appointment so perplexing for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. He's gone from being this outsider, a voice of dissent, to being one of the key decision makers in the FBI.
So, like, will his previous criticisms translate into concrete actions now that he's the one with the power to implement change?
We'll see.
And then there's the elephant in the room, his close alignment with former President Trump.
Right. Both articles highlight how Bongino has been a staunch supporter of Trump, even spreading misinformation about the 2020 election.
And let's not forget that this appointment came directly from Trump himself.
Announced via Truth Social.
Of course.
It adds another layer to the whole thing, doesn't it? It's like a political chess move almost, placing a loyal ally within a powerful institution.
And to make things even more interesting, Bongino won't be the only Trump ally at the top. He'll be serving under the newly appointed FBI Director Kash Patel,
who also has really strong ties to the former president.
So now you've got to consider the broader context here. The FBI itself has been going through a really tumultuous period. There have been forced departures of senior officials, internal investigations stemming from the January 6th Capitol riot, and a general sense of unease within the ranks.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So it's like you're dropping Bongino and Patel into this already volatile situation.
And who knows what's going to happen next?
It's a recipe for some potential disruption, for sure.
Oh, yeah. You've got two individuals who are essentially outsiders to the FBI's traditional culture and hierarchy. They're coming in with a very clear agenda, loyalty to Trump, and this desire to reshape the agency.
And that's bound to create friction.
Oh, absolutely.
So we've got Bongino, the outspoken critic, now on the inside. We've got a new FBI director who's also a Trump loyalist.
And we've got an agency that's already in a state of flux.
It's a lot to take in, and the implications are huge.
I mean, we're talking potential consequences for the FBI itself and for the broader political landscape.
Like the possibility of political bias influencing investigations.
A shift in priorities away from areas like counterterrorism.
And a potential erosion of public trust in the FBI's impartiality.
If people start seeing the FBI as a tool for political agendas that could seriously undermine its ability to actually function properly.
Exactly. And that's where we need to start thinking about what all of this means. How might this appointment actually impact the FBI's operations, its investigation?
Its identity, even.
That's what we're going to explore as we continue our deep dive today.
I'm fascinated to hear it.
Me too.
One of the most immediate areas we might see an impact is the FBI's approach to investigations. Both articles highlight concerns from Democrats about potential for political adversaries being targeted.
Oh yeah, that's a chilling thought. Given Bongino's very public and often harsh criticism of those on the left, it's not hard to imagine how that could translate into a more aggressive stance towards those perceived as political opponents.
And you know, he isn't coming into this role with a blank slate. He's got a history, a very vocal and opinionated one.
Right.
Critics argue that his lack of experience within the FBI, combined with his really strong political leanings, raises serious doubts about his ability to remain impartial.
It's almost like putting a diehard fan in charge of refereeing a game. People are bound to question their objectivity.
Totally.
And you can bet those who have been on the receiving end of Bongino's criticism in the past are going to be watching his every move.
Oh, for sure. Every single one.
Totally. So this brings us to a crucial point. The FBI's reputation for neutrality is paramount.
It really is.
For the agency to function effectively, people need to trust that investigations are being conducted based on evidence and the rule of law.
Not on personal vendettas or political agendas.
Exactly, because if that trust erodes, the FBI loses its credibility.
And then what do you have?
You've got a law enforcement agency that's seen as a political weapon, which is not good.
No, not at all. A recipe for disaster.
And this potential for politicization isn't just a domestic concern. The FBI plays a big role in international law enforcement and intelligence sharing. Its partnerships with agencies around the world are really essential for combating transnational crime and terrorism.
Oh, for sure.
So how could this appointment impact those relationships?
Well, imagine you're a foreign intelligence agency that's worked closely with the FBI. You've built up trust over years of collaboration.
Right.
Now you see this new leadership in place, figures with very strong ties to a particular political
It
faction.
makes you hesitant.
Yeah, you'd have to question whether the information you're sharing might be used for political purposes or whether the FBI's priorities might shift in a way that's detrimental to your own interests.
Absolutely. And that hesitation could have a ripple effect,
Totally.
leading to a decrease in information sharing, less cooperation on investigations.
Ultimately weakening the global fight against crime and terrorism.
So we've talked about the potential impact on investigations both domestically and internationally, but there's also the question of how this appointment might affect the FBI's internal dynamics.
Right, we can't forget about the people who work within the FBI, the rank-and-file agents and analysts who are dedicated to upholding the law.
Right, they're the ones actually doing the work.
And now they're facing a situation where their leadership has a very specific agenda, one that might not align with their own values or with the FBI's traditional mission.
And you mentioned earlier the FBI has already been going through some turmoil.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the forced departures, the investigations related to January 6th, and then on top of that, you add this new leadership team with a very clear political alignment.
It's going to cause some friction for sure.
You're going to have agents who are worried about being pressured to pursue politically motivated investigations.
Or who feel like their expertise is being sidelined in favor of this new set of priorities.
There's also the question of morale. If agents feel like the agency's integrity is being compromised, that's going to impact their motivation and effectiveness.
Absolutely. It's a classic case of leadership setting the tone.
If the message from the top is that loyalty to a particular political figure trumps everything else, that's going to create a culture of fear and distrust.
Within the ranks.
And that can lead to a lot of dysfunction. An organization like the FBI can only function effectively if its members feel like they're working towards a common goal, a mission that transcends partisan politics.
And that brings us back to Patel's vision for the FBI. Remember he talked about reducing the agency's footprint in Washington?
And shifting the focus back towards more traditional crime fighting.
Right. So there's a potential clash here between Patel's vision and the FBI's more recent focus on counterterrorism and intelligence gathering.
You have agents who have dedicated their careers to those areas, who have developed really specialized skills and expertise.
Now they might be seeing a shift in resources and priorities.
That makes them feel like their work is being devalued.
Yeah, and then you've got that potential tension between this new leadership and the rank-and-file agents.
Between those who prioritize traditional law enforcement and those who see counterterrorism as the primary threat.
It's a lot to juggle, and it remains to be seen how this new leadership team will navigate all these complex dynamics.
But one thing is clear. The stakes are really high.
Incredibly high.
The FBI played such a critical role in safeguarding our nation.
It does.
And its ability to operate effectively and impartially is essential.
And that's why this appointment has generated so much concern and scrutiny.
Right. It's not just about Bongino as an individual.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It's about what his appointment represents. A potential shift in the FBI's culture, its priorities.
Its very identity.
So we're looking at kind of a perfect storm brewing within the FBI internal tensions, a shift in priorities, and these looming questions about political bias. It's enough to make anyone wonder what happens next.
Right. What happens now? It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. We're in uncharted territory here. But maybe we can look at historical parallels. How have similar situations played out in the past?
That's a good point. Are there any examples that come to mind? Any instances where a law enforcement agency's gone through a similar kind of upheaval?
Well, one example that kind of jumps out is J. Edgar Hoover's reign over the FBI.
Oh, yeah.
He was a really controversial figure accused of using the agency for personal gain and political vendettas.
Right.
His tenure had a lasting impact on the FBI's reputation. It took years to rebuild that trust after he left.
So are we saying Bongino's appointment could have that same kind of long-term impact?
It's too early to tell for sure, but the potential is there for sure. The parallels are there. You have a strong personality coming in with a very specific agenda, and that can really fundamentally alter the course of an organization.
And what about the impact on public perception? We've talked about how crucial it is for the FBI to maintain that image of impartiality. How might this appointment affect that?
Well, the articles already highlight a growing sense of unease among the public. People are wondering, can the FBI really be trusted to act independently, free from that political influence?
Right.
And that skepticism is likely to intensify if we start seeing investigations that seem to target certain individuals or groups based on their political affiliations.
It's a slippery slope.
It is. The more the FBI is seen as this tool for political agendas, the more its credibility erodes.
And the less effective it becomes as a law enforcement agency.
Exactly, and that's dangerous for any democracy. A strong, independent law enforcement agency is absolutely essential for upholding the rule of law and ensuring public safety. But that independence is fragile. It can be undermined by even the perception of political bias.
So where does that leave us? What can we as citizens do to make sure the FBI remains a force for good, an institution that we can all trust?
I think first and foremost, we need to stay informed. We have to pay close attention to how the FBI operates under this new leadership,
Right.
scrutinize its actions, hold it accountable for any transgressions. We also need to engage in open and honest conversations about the role of law enforcement in a democratic society, the importance of impartiality, and the dangers of politicization.
It's about being vigilant. It's about not just assuming that these institutions like the FBI will always operate fairly and justly.
Right.
We need to hold those in power accountable. And we need to speak up if we see any signs of abuse or overreach.
You have a voice. You can contact your elected officials, express your concerns, demand transparency and accountability from those who are entrusted with upholding the law.
This isn't just some abstract political drama happening in Washington. This has real-world consequences for all of us.
Absolute.
The FBI's actions or even inactions can have a huge impact on our lives, our safety, our freedoms.
That's why it's so important to have these conversations, to be critical thinkers and to be active in shaping the future of our institutions. We can't just sit back. We need to be informed, engaged, and ready to speak out when things aren't right.
I think that's a great point to end on. This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. It's clear that Bongino's appointment has really thrown a wrench in the works, and the implications are far-reaching.
Oh, they are.
This is a situation that demands our attention, our scrutiny, and our active engagement.
The stories grow from over. The coming months and years will reveal just how profound of an impact this is going to have on the FBI and on the nation as a whole.
And we'll be here to break it all down for you. So be sure to subscribe to The Global Take for more in-depth analysis of the stories shaping our world. We'll continue to dig deep, challenge assumptions, and give you the insights you need to navigate these complex and ever-changing times. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.